No, I guess I didn't. So basically what we want to do is we want to keep that level of enthusiasm up here in this community, okay? Because again, I mean, I can't thank you guys enough for what you've done. You know what, it was if you all remember, they came out with the environmental assessment. The environmental assessment, essentially, their preferred alternative at the time was to cut everything down. They admitted that. What was her name? Ron DeSantos at a meeting in, those of you that were at the meeting in the fairground, or in the, right here.
November 7th.
Yeah, November 7th, 2011. Right here. She admitted that their preferred alternative is to cut every healthy host species within, at that time it was a quarter mile. Every healthy host species surrounding an infested tree within a quarter mile. Now for those of you that don't know what a quarter mile represents, a quarter mile radius around a tree is about 300
No, half mile's
503.
That's a half mile.
Oh, so it's 200, yeah, I always get, pi always drives me crazy, that pi thing. But anyways, it's like, it's like for a half an acre, which is now what they're proposing, which by the way, I just want to explain something to you. It was bad enough that they were going to remove the trees in, what, 200, what was the acreage? For a quarter mile.
Remember, like, within 230 acres of whatever.
Was 230 acres, yeah. So they were going to remove trees in 230 acres. Now that they've expanded this thing to half a mile, we're talking for every infested tree there's a potential to take down 503 acres of healthy trees, the potential. Something to think about, make you sleep good.
Bill?
Yes?
If a potential host tree that's not infected is treated chemically, how long is that effective for? Or how often does that tree have to be treated?
The protocol that the ArborJet people have been using in Worcester, Massachusetts is a period of 3 years. So in other words, we spent money to treat some of the trees on our farm with imidacloprid, knowing damn well the government came to us and said, well, you know what, Bill, yeah, you can spend your thousands of dollars, but if we decide that we're going to take them down, whether you treated them or not, we're cutting them down. They basically told us that. But the protocol calls for 3 consecutive years of treatment. Now, I'll give you an average. The average is about, I shouldn't even give you an average because we're not going to have to do this. Let the government pay to treat these trees. 15-inch maple, $50 to treat it. A year.
And they're recommending each year for 3 years?
For 3 years.
For 3 years, yeah. So that 15-inch maple will be in your front yard, treated, is going to cost you $150 when all is said and done. Yes?
As far as you know, Bill, have they taken down any other trees other than maple, like on your property?
There is very few. Yeah, there's one. We've heard of one elm. I think Joel had a buckeye over there. I've heard of one willow that has come down, a willow that has come down. But 98.something% of the time, at least based on their own numbers for Tate Township.
They took a willow down on my property.
Oh, they did. So that's 2 willow. Okay, so, but still within that 99% of the time, this beetle is going to be in a maple. It's going to be in a maple. And they found that all over the country. So.
Did they give up on the emerald ash borer?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But if they treat the ash with imidacloprid for 3 years, you have a really good chance of beating that bug too.
Yeah, yeah. And that's what we're doing on our farm. We're spending money. We're spending the money to go ahead and treat the trees that I really want to keep.
Well, I'd like to make lumber out of them. They don't want me to do that.
No, you're absolutely right. Yes, Brownie.
I had an ash tree in my backyard.
Yeah.
It was time.
Yeah.
It started to sprout at the roots. The house hollow.
Yeah.
I had to pay to have it taken down.
Okay.
I was going to take it to a friend of mine here in Master Road, let him burn it up and use it.
They won't let
stopped
you.
and they said, you're quarantined.
Right.
You know what they did with it? Push it back in your woods. That's where it is now. The chunks that I cut up that could have been burned and destroyed are back in the woods.
That's what they told you
That's
to do
what
with
the
that ash
Ohio
tree.
boys told. There's 2 Ohio boys told.
Oh,
I thought you should know that. And there's just still the woods back there. If something's down there, and it's all back in the woods. So
Oh,
you can take it over. If you want to, you can load it up and haul over to have it ground up and the brush. So I burnt the brush. But I can't even take it out there where he could burn in his fire, in his stove.
Yeah.
Get rid of it for good.
Yeah.
I had to shove it back in the woods.
So
And
now
if it is infected, if it is there, this is emerald, this is not the Asian.
Right.
Yeah.
If it is infected, I'm just pushing it back there so it can infect it much more.
Yep.
I'm glad, I wish you had told me that.
Well, I wish I had it.
Goodness gracious.
I wish they had told me that too.
Now, that's something else I need to look into. I mean, we need to get on that right away. If that's what that recommendations that they're making. I was gonna talk about firewood a little bit later on, but we'll kind of deviate from what the.
Another thing about firewood, I see truckloads of firewood all up and down 125, all in Tate Township.
Yeah.
Of course, they got to sign a thing, and we're not going to take it out of Tate Township.
Yeah,
Well,
They
they're,
don't know where that's going out there. or
they're
not.
allowed to go through, they're just not allowed to stop.
yeah, they're not allowed to stop. In other words, you can bring, if you're going from Brown County.
These are sitting in yards here.
Yeah, I know, I see them too. I know, I see them
And I can't
too.
even burn mine, and they can set that stuff out in the yard. There's 4 or 5 of them on 125 in
Yeah.
Tate Township.
Yeah, yeah,
Firewood for sale.
yeah, I've seen
You know
that.
they're not going to all stay in Tate Township.
Well, the legally, there's, yeah, right. I hear you. Yeah, they're not gonna all
It's
stay
like
in
selling a
Tate
gun in
Township.
Kentucky, and you can't,
Yeah.
Kentucky can't go over and buy a gun, but you can
Yeah.
have some here sign.
So there we are, we're trying to make every effort we possibly can to eliminate this beetle right here in Tate Township, and you've got the government giving them the okay to go ahead and just carry it on to somewhere else. Yeah, I don't understand it either, Brownie. I see the same thing, I see all those firewood places that have popped up all of a sudden. Now, just so you know about firewood, the way they're saying with firewood, and Nancy, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's my understanding that you have the ability to burn your own wood, you have the ability to cut down an infested tree on your property if you want to. You can keep that wood on your property, but it has to be burnt
That's
before.
not exactly right.
Okay, good.
Okay.
That's what I need.
Here's the deal. If they've already marked it red, they don't want you cutting it down. But if it's a host tree species and you want to cut it down and you want to use it for firewood, that's fine and dandy. If you cut down a tree in your own yard and you have it seasoning over, it used to be that at the end of the season when emergence was going to happen, they would take all of your wood and shred it, and then somebody told them about seasoning, because like these greenhorns don't know anything about firewood. And so now we're allowed to keep our own uninfested firewood for seasoning. But if it's like a maple or a host tree species, and you have any question about whether or not it's infested, you can call a guy named Jonathan Shields up in Amelia, and he's a good guy. He's not too offensive as far as government officials go, and he'll inspect it for you and sign it off as uninfested so that you can actually keep it and burn it.
Is the limitation on moving firewood hardwood or only host species? I read hardwood.
But if it's firewood, it's any firewood that's caught.
So like locusts, someone can't take the dead locust off my place and move it somewhere.
So-
And there's another double whammy. If you had infested trees taken off your property, like on my property, I can't move my cut firewood to Lori next door. That's illegal. It used to be that, well, if you haven't had anything cut or marked infested on your property, you can still move your firewood around in the quarantine area. But for me, I can't take a piece of wood off of my property. For how long? Until they're out of here 10 years from now.
That's the reason I could not take this out there, because I'm quarantined, because I have to have my front yard taken out.
Yeah,
That's
so
the
you
reason I
can't
can't
take
move it.
wood off of
I
your
didn't
property.
make that clear, that's the reason I couldn't move that.
Yeah, but we're all quarantined.
No, if you,
There's
there's
two
2 levels of
quarantines.
quarantine. The first level of quarantine is the outer edges of whatever their map says. That's the first level. And within that quarantine, if you don't have any infested trees on your property, you can move firewood anywhere you want to within that quarantine area. You just can't go outside the quarantine area. You cannot take, there's a second level, and you and I belong to the second level. You cannot take a host tree species off of my property, period.
Yeah, me too.
A branch or anything else.
Okay.
So there's a deeper level of quarantine once you have infested trees on your property. And that's that.
Okay, cool, thank you. Nance, thanks for that clarification. So essentially, in response, if there's firewood that's passing through here, as long as it doesn't stop within the outer quarantine of then you're free to move firewood through, but as soon as you stop, then that firewood could no longer move out of the quarantine. Now, stop where? I don't know. What does that mean? Does that mean if I stop at Frisch's and get lunch?
No, they said that that's okay.
They did say that? Cool. I'd hate to have Frisch's lose any business over the front.
That's exactly.
I couldn't move my firewood. All right, let's see. What time is it? Okay. I want to get Nancy up here to talk about NEPA, but let me see if there was something that I wanted to mention. Basically, it was just, I'll just reiterate this about keeping the momentum rolling. I'm calling on each one of you to comment again. Please take the time to do that. Well, before we get into the specifics of the EA, and we'll try to keep that as general as possible as well for the sake of time, I would like to invite Nancy back up because she's got some interesting observations about NEPA and about, so,
Okay.
come on, get up.
All right.
Stool out. Short stuff.
Thank you.
You got it.
All right. I'm going to make this fast because it's kind of boring, but it's something that I want you guys to keep in the back of your mind as you're listening to what's in this new EA. Okay, NEPA is the National Environmental Policy Act, and it's an executive branch of the government, covers it, and it's simply to enforce that if you're going to do a big project, there has to be some kind of environmental oversight. That's the whole reason we have an EA to begin with. An environmental assessment is mandated by NEPA. And that the good thing is that the USDA has NEPA people who are not USDA reading our comments also. And they're applying it to their document and making assessments based on their document. So they can come back to the USDA and say, you're going to have to work with this. Or, you know, this comment is you're going to have to address this. And so that kind of oversight, you know, I don't know these people, so I don't know how well it works, or if they're, you know, good old boys and buddies. I don't know. But it seems to have worked this time. This environmental assessment, definitely, they read our comments. They took our comments to heart. They knew that they couldn't run over us the way they anticipated when they first got here. And they addressed that. So I'm pretty darn pleased with that. When you're making your comments, USDA, all they have in their mind is to prevent the spread and to eradicate the beetle. They could care less if my house falls down in the process. That's not the point of the environmental assessment. The point of the environmental assessment is how they get through the red tape to do their job. And their job is to prevent the spread and to eradicate the beetle. So when you're doing your comment, you have to keep that in mind. We're addressing this environmental assessment and how it reflects on our lifestyle and the human community here. And they're going to have to deal with what we bring up to them about us. And everything we bring up that gets in the way of their idea, they're going to have to address and change it. These are the 5 different points that they will take into consideration. The action might have harmful effects to the following: human environment, its social, cultural, physical, economic resources, and natural resources. So when we're talking about environment, we're not just talking about, you know, Bambi. We're talking about how we appreciate our trees, how we use our trees, and every one of you who has a yard with trees in it has a different purpose for those trees, and that's different than Boston and New York. Boston, New York, you know, you walk through a Central Park, that's a wonderful experience, but we use our trees, and we use our wildlife, and we have, you know, Bill uses his trees differently than I use mine, and we're very close, next, you know, a few doors down and all. And everybody here, I would say, has an individual experience with their trees. I mean, not just the taking pollutants out of the air, which it says in here, grass does just as well. I don't know why. But, so if, and there's social. There's a lot of, it's not just firewood, it's the feeling that you get when you walk through your woods. That actually has to be addressed in these, environmental assessments. So anyway, the USDA has a lot of control over what they do. They do not have to choose the most environmentally responsible choice, A, B, C, or D, but they do have to choose something that they can talk to the NEPA people and say, this is why I chose that, and justify it. So when you comment, give every reason you could possibly come up with why you save your trees, why you want it done the way you want it done. And I don't, it's up to you after reading the 4 different ways to respond to this eradication process, what you choose, what you want. We have the whole gamut of responses, but give them an idea, and it's not a choice, it's talking about how that affects you. Now this is the NEPA process. I'm not going to go through it, and it's on the website, the whole document's on the website. I think it's under resources. So you can read the document, it's on there, and it's not as complicated as it looks, but it's there if you want the nitty-gritty. If you want to bypass that, just have clear and relevant comments. Make sure that your responses pertain to the beetle. They're not just a belly aching session. Solution-oriented. Tell them exactly what you want them to do. If we all say, gee, we want you to do X, Y, or Z, and we all have our own personal reasons for that, they have to pay attention to that. And address the purpose and need for the action. Address how it's going to help in controlling, eradicating, or not controlling or eradicating if you don't want them controlled or eradicated. Address the purpose of the EA in your response. Okay, now an environmental assessment up until this point could only conclude with a FONSI or an EIS. An EIS is an environmental impact statement, and that means that they have to go into some more science. They don't understand how the impact is going to affect the environment in a completely scientific way, and they will have to do some studies. Now, they're going to take 3 years to delimit, to find the outermost edges of this infestation, so they have plenty of time, in my opinion, to do an EIS, to put some boots on the ground, to put some scientists in our woods, to do some soil and water research. That's what I want to happen. And a FONSI means finding of no significant impact. And I think that the 15,000 trees a year, for however many years they're here to eradicate the beetle, there's no way that that's not going to have an impact on our environment. But they will conclude with one of these 2 before they start cutting anything but infested trees or treatment. They can't, by law, they can't skip that step. And this is where you can address your comments too. If you want to write this down, make sure you put the Asian longhorn beetle in Claremont County, Ohio, revised environmental assessment January of 2013, or they just might ignore the whole process. So make sure you put that on your document. We'll leave that. Pardon me?
Is that on the website?
It is. It's on the question and answer too, and I think it's on the end of the EA itself.
It's on the EA that's back there, the question and answer page, on the website. We're going to be talking about it in Facebook. It's going to, if you want, another thing, if you want me to archive your comments, I did that the last time. I have lots and lots and lots of comments that I have kept, so that when we go back and we read the environmental assessment revision this time, which again is unprecedented, but when we do that, we can put your comments next to that and see that they did address our comments, that they actually genuinely did. They can't get by with not addressing it, I mean, because we have the actual comments. And I do have some comments from last period that are made anonymous and posted on the website too, if you kind of want to get a grip on how that worked last time. If you've already made a comment or a response and you want to just revise it, say I still believe in this and this is how I want it done and this is why, by all means use it again and revise it for the differences in this environmental assessment. And I think that's it for NEPA.
Thanks, Nance.